Hi, Lerato. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. And it's a privilege being here. I really appreciate you taking your time and allowing me to come on to the show. It's amazing. I'm fine.
Good to hear. Good to hear. It's great to have you on the future under construction. You know, a lot of people have always asked about human resources and career development, and I just thought it would be interesting to have you on the podcast to talk about your career, how you've progressed, how you've got to where you are. You know, being a business owner and focusing more on HR issues, career development, mentoring and coaching. Tell us about your journey. How have you progressed from when you were a child, when you're thinking about what you wanted to do, to where you are now? Obviously there's lots of questions there.
Yes, I'm excited. So I like my career journey. A lot of people always look and stare and they're like, why is she like that? So I always like talking about it sometimes as a defense mechanism, sometimes as a way of kind of talking about, I think what I've always mentioned here is the myriads of the minefields that I've walked because some of the challenges I've faced is just, the kind of people saying things about your career and making you feel like you shouldn't have taken that career. So I like talking about what I've done, and I'll start from childhood. So my dad, bless his heart, he's late, used to always talk to me a lot, and we always used to have very in-depth conversations. And I think he was picking up that I'm quite a smart little girl. I think that's how I can put it without bragging. And he then said to me, I think you need to be a lawyer because you like arguing a lot. And I really genuinely like arguing a lot. And when he put that word in me, listen, I took it right through and I said, I'm going to be a lawyer when I grow up. But I think when you change environment and you come to a different place, a different playing field, there's certain things that you're either told or even as you grow, you see. So one of the reasons why my career span quickly from, I think I used to just do like customer services, just working normal office work. And it quickly span into HR was because I used to be that person that used to stand for people. So HR is interesting because the HR person in the organization stands for the business, but they kind of are the people person where people should go to. So therefore, there is that kind of line. And I think I've naturally picked up that I'm a helper of people. I'm somebody that really likes to assist people when they're in trouble or in problems. And I've picked that up from even primary school. I could give examples even in high school. I've always been that person that stands for my friends or fights for my friends or tries to be the defending person. So from that, I think it showed me a lot. It stemmed out that path. So it just created it out of nowhere. I started managing a team, and when I did that, from that it gave me such a refreshing experience, kind of having being the go-to person, everybody coming to me and just giving me their ideas of how we should change or improve the team. So that's basically how my HR journey was born. So the reason why I spoke about my dad and how it applies is because HR also has compliance and it also has governance. So it does push the agenda of making sure that people are doing the right thing in the organization. So remember, we are the people that will hire you. We are the people that will vet you, check your CV, make sure that it's correct, make sure that it goes in line with what you're saying you're applying for and you've got the right experience. We're the people that you do your criminal record checks, DBSs, things like that. So all that is governance, and that's legal stuff. So it kind of pinches into the law part where my dad said she needs to be a lawyer. And there's also the aspect, I think, when you think about the compliance side, things like fire and safety in the organization. So it's a very broad, HR is very broad. I think it's one of the broadest things that I've ever come across. So it just depends on what path you want to take. Yeah, so that's why I mentioned my dad and the legal side and how I came up to become where I am now. So being that team leader, being that helpful person in the organization, I started to pick up that there was something strong about me as that helpful person. I'm a very direct person when I speak at professional level. So when it came to the firing, there was challenges. There was a time when I had to fire my own best friend at the time. And that, oh my God, tears were on both of our eyes because she was such a misbehaving, very beautiful, fun loving person in the office. And I had to fire her, but she was my friend. So it was very difficult. So the challenges that come with firing people, I mean, I'm using firing as part of your understanding of, obviously from the selection side, the governance in the organization, encompassing all that, and then going to the stage where even the firing is part of HR. So there's that aspect in terms of, sometimes I think one time I had an experience where I was made to kind of speak to somebody, give them notice based on the fact that they were smelling in the office. And I don't know if people know that there is some kind of risks in terms of that. So you can't really say that to people. So there's a level of understanding from an HR perspective. Obviously, there's protected characteristics that come into play. You have to speak to a person, but have to understand if they're in the right mental state. So there's so much that as an HR person, your mind frame always has to be correct. You can't just go into that office and tell them, oh, you smell, now we're going to fire you. But we had to give that person notice, because then if everybody else in the business is complaining and it looks like it's an issue, you don't go into that meeting with a kind of a bullet or a gun kind of approach. You have to approach that person from a place of, embrace, understand what they're going through. Is there anything that you can help support with, and things like that? So as I've given you that scope, I'm trying to show you how broad HR is, and my level of understanding of being able to be that people person, stand for the organization, but also speak to people that come to me in confidence. We call ourselves the confidence of the business as well, because when you come to me, you speak to me, you can be able to tell me what I won't necessarily share with everyone, like in the business, in as far as like gossip is concerned. But if there's crucial issues, yes, that's when we stand and kind of obviously report things. HR has a lot of paperwork that stems out of it, so the admin side comes. I know, Peggy, I'm talking to you now. I don't know if you remember, back then I was made a secretary for that Mr. Nyoni's choir. I used to be the secretary for the Rainbow. What was it called? The Rainbow Club. Because then I'm quite a secretariat as well. So I write quite a lot. And so some of these things just came from, listen, things were just being thrown from my childhood, and they just stemmed into my career now. So why I kind of went into that and then want to take you guys through to the part where I'm saying where I am now is because where I come from, Zimbabwe, there's that mentality of office work, you don't get paid a lot of money. Why should you do that? Go and do nursing. But not everybody's a nurse. Peggy, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Machisela said I was going to go and become a nurse. And I was like, me? Nurse? No way. So it's something that I told myself from high school, that I will not be a nurse. And he said he dreamed of me being a nurse in Vancouver Island somewhere. I don't know where Vancouver Island is, but there's Vancouver, right, in Canada. But he said that, and he defined my path. And I said, I'm not going to be a nurse because I'm not really into blood, and yeah, there's something about hospitals for me. So it was such an interesting pick of a career and a choice of a career, because when everybody was going into nursing, whichever direction they took in there, I never joined that kind of bandwagon, if I'm going to call it that. And so therefore that's why my story sounds funny, because how did I like HR? It's because my dad said, you're going to be a lawyer. And I said, yes, I'm running with that. But because I could see from where we are, this country here, a lot of people I know that studied law went and then became a nurse because they couldn't get a job in law. I don't know if you're aware of the challenges sometimes that people face, but is this something that everybody faces? I don't know. I'm just saying it from a perspective, my own experiences and stuff. So that's how I got to become, with the number of years of HR. So I don't know whether it goes now up to about 16 or 17 years working in HR, being a manager, being a team leader, being a manager. And currently I have my own business, which focuses on more, of course, it does the recruitment side, which I'm going to go into in a little bit, but I focus also in terms of helping, guiding, counseling. So you can see that came from when I was young. So the helping, the guiding, the counseling side is a spiritual gift. So when I realized that, that's when I knew that even if HR is not a paying job at any point, I can't run away from it, because it's a calling, it's a spiritual gift. I love helping people. I can actually speak to somebody and tell them what career they need to be in. And if they're
Mhm.
doing the wrong thing, I can actually tell them and kind of pull it out of them that no, you need to be this. So that's why, even if there's challenges in the HR sector, and one of the challenges I want to point out straight away is it's a very competitive and saturated market. So when you're looking for an HR role, you're gonna struggle because there's that element of everybody goes into HR. People love HR, and I think they think it's easy. But as they progress to those levels that they need to progress to, and I'll go into that also in a moment, they realize that no, we might as well maybe take a different direction and try something else, because once you've completed HR to the highest level, it's not easy to start at the highest level. I think it's the same with every career, but it's not easy to kind of go in and work from so the highest level of HR is the CIPD level 7, which is the charter. So the level 7 qualifies you to become a director of a business,
Mhm.
but that should obviously come with the experience as well. So you can't just walk into a business and then become a director after university. So it needs your lived experience, it needs your academics as well, on that note. So those are some of the challenges that we faced as HR people, because the market is quite saturated. But yeah, that's I don't know whether that's a nutshell, but that's how it goes so far.
Just looking back, on the journey that you've just talked about, and thinking about some of the challenges that, the decisions that you've had to make, especially like you mentioned in like letting go of a friend. How do you divorce yourself in terms of um, emotion, in terms of to say this is the professional me, but I still have to, do what is right for the business.
Mm.
Because I think firing decisions or hiring decisions are very difficult decisions, and you're basically looking at someone's. You can basically make or break someone's future.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So whether you decide to hire somebody or whether you decide to fire somebody, obviously there's some form of um divorcing of the emotion, after having spoken to the person. You've had a sense of, what that person is like, and you may like them, but they're not the right fit. How do
Mm.
you divorce yourself from that to deliver such information as an HR person?
So yeah, that's one of the skills that an HR person has to have, and I want to call it a skill. There's no better word for it. So one of the things that you have to have is that compassion, that empathy, but also recognizing, as you've mentioned, they're not adding value to the business. So as an HR person, you're also that person that should be strict with time management, absence and things like that. So if somebody is not making it to work, and because they are your friend, and that's why generally HR people don't become friends with anyone in the office, because what you're trying to avoid is that struggle to divorce yourself. So there's usually that aspect of picking up that somebody's going to be late so many times, and if they're your friend, they're just coming to apologize and do it again tomorrow. But if there's a process in place, first of all, because even if the process is in place, there's people, and I've seen that in offices in a lot. Some managers don't follow that process with due respect to it.
Mm.
So there's that element of being able to be strong enough to stand for what your team ethics are, what your team aims to develop or become. So if somebody is really pulling, because I tend to see it as teamwork all the time. So when somebody's dragging the team back, it affects everybody on the team. And if somebody's allowed to do one wrong thing, I think being an HR person is like being a parent straight away, because if you let one get away, you're allowing everybody else to get away with it. So when one person is late all the time or is missing work all the time, you guys are lacking in so many parts. So even the
Mhm.
budgets, even the planning of the team, that could also impact the organization. But if you let one person get away with it one day and everybody else sees it, then it carries on. It becomes
I
a
guess
chain.
I guess that's why most people view HR not so kindly in a lot of
There's a
organizations. Yeah, because like I mentioned, s- to you earlier, about
yeah.
the statement that I heard before, where
Mm.
uh, I heard the statement where somebody said HR is not your friend. HR
No.
works for the organization, so HR's first priority is to protect the organization.
Yeah.
You come as a secondary to that objective.
Mm.
So whatever you do, so how then should people relate to HR in
Mm. It's a very thin line, and it's an understanding of how that organization approaches HR, or how because there's different schools of thought, and I don't want to go into that because people will be confused, but there's so many different ways that businesses do HR. Some businesses are very people focused, so they want to make sure that what the people say is what they carry out the organizations to become. But a lot of organizations, because HR is a very governed you know kind of um yeah, it's not a sector, but I want to think about the fact that there's things like ACAS, there's documentation for everything that you have to do, there's that compliance, any what's the word? Why is English right away from my head now? Any meetings or
Mhm.
any conversations is the word, that are held between me, the HR person, and the person in business, that needs to be recorded. The reason why that gets recorded is not because we're trying to sell your story out to everybody. Unfortunately, sometimes it does, but it's just so that when there is another issue, we look at the past behavior. So there is behavior that could affect how you're behaving later, which obviously most times, I'm trying to speak subtly here, that's why I'm slowing down, is because most times, that's why things like disciplinary actions are there. That's why those conversations, even prior to the disciplinary actions, are held, so that we can see where it's stemming from, where it's coming from, the root cause of your behavior, the root cause of your patterns. I mean, there is certain things that people should appreciate about HR, say from the person's perspective, because I'll give an example of myself. I like using myself, and when I say myself, just know that I'm about to become vulnerable. So there was a time back in my life, and I was struggling with an ex. It wasn't an ex-husband as such, but he was my ex, and he was abusive. So when that person is being abusive, the people to know this information and care for you are HR. It's not your teammates. It's not the office, because they're going to go and gossip. So that's one of the examples I'll give, Beggy, to say when HR is there for you as a place of confidentiality, confidence, they are the people that can actually call the police on your behalf. So, okay, nothing happened seriously to me, but the part that I had as protection there was that my actual manager, and she was slash HR, because I was under her and I was also slash HR. We used to confide in each other, and we could talk about this thing that was happening in my life, and she would give me advice. So based on the fact that she's doing it from not just a friendship basis, but she's doing it from also an organizational perspective. So they had so many things, roles that they played in protecting me from being actually physically abused. So
Mm.
I think people should embrace HR a lot more, because if they think that the only thing that we do is protect the organization, it's not like that. We are the middleman that stands to walk you through your career as a person, because people like me, especially who have the calling, as I'm going to call it, of a career progressor, somebody that helps you and harnesses your talent, I'm not going to sit there and just expect you to do your work and go home. I'm the type of HR professional that will sit with you and try and see, where are you starting now? Where do you want to go? What's your vision? Do you want me to, talk about this with the managers? And if it's something that's available for progression, it's there. If it's not, it's not. So I can stand and be that person. I can actually, go and start thinking about how we can improve the reward system. And I've done this in, a past organization I used to work in, where the rewards were not so great, and people used to be able to come to me because I was that person that they could go to and really actually openly speak to and say, look, the salary is not great. This is how much. I remember it was quite a private business. And an example of that was that some of the people I recruited directly from like agencies would work in there and then say to me, Lerato, my ride from home to work is this amount of money per month. If my salary is this amount of money per month, I'm looking at, after paying rent and probably paying council tax, I don't have money for food. So we need to review our salaries. So who else would do that? if HR was not there. I
Mm.
then become the person that goes to the managers or the directors of the business and says, look, let's have a very full scope look at how we can review our salary increases in such a way that it doesn't impact people, because we love these people, don't we? Yes, we do. So why would you want to not pay them enough? Yet they can see you coming in driving your Range Rovers and, buying expensive furniture inside the office, but people are working, and struggling. So people shouldn't look at HR as a place where you're going to get insulted and fired. It's also a place of comfort and making sure that your work life, because you spend a lot of time in the office, you should look at
Mm.
HR as a place where you can actually speak confidently. Yes, I'm not taking away from the fact that there's places where HR can be very strict and very, not so favorable, but that's not how it should be. From how I
Mm.
know HR, that's not how it should be.
Okay, so I kind of get a sense of what it's like in the day of in the life of an HR professional. There's
Mm,
quite a lot, from hand holding
yeah.
to um, career development, navigating within the business. How best can people progress? There's also being an advocate
Yeah.
for people in terms of whether it can be monetary or otherwise,
Mm,
social issues within the business, and and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people sometimes misunderstand in terms of the role of HR.
mm-hmm.
And just looking at right now at people, teenagers or people who are looking to make the transition or the move into becoming HR professionals, like you say, it's a calling.
Mm,
It's not for the faint-hearted, because
no.
there are a lot of things from the way I've seen it. There's a lot of things that HR has to deal with which are uncomfortable.
Hmm.
it, you mentioned your life story about the situations you've had to deal with, and if somebody is coming to you to open up about such a situation, and you having to be the person that handles that information
Yeah.
and doing it from a place of empathy, but also from a place of um protecting the business's asset.
Mm,
As
mm.
much as people would like to uh, refuse or deny that human
They're an
resources,
asset.
as in the people, are an asset of the business,
Mm, mm.
it is true. They are an asset of the
Yeah.
business because they're the ones who actually make the business run.
Yeah.
Um, so the day in the life of an HR person seems to be quite colorful, I would say.
Yeah. And I like color, so it suited me fine. I was happy to always be that person that will speak to people. One of the contracts I had a few months ago was disciplinary, and some of the cases that we had to deal with, because this is a big health organization which I can't mention, some of the cases we had to deal with were quite deep, in the sense that we are not the recruitment team within that particular business. We are
Mm,
not the people that do the vetting. We are just the people that deal with the disciplinaries, the
mm,
meetings that are being
mm,
held. It was a health organization. When somebody does negligent stuff in a health organization, people's lives are at stake.
mm,
We are then the people that make the decision whether to keep that person or those people. One of the cases I dealt with actually went to tribunal, and this person had actually been negligent on a baby. So
mm,
you can imagine the color in that. It
mm.
actually drains you as an HR person emotionally. So you need to really come home and really zen and pray and meditate and come out of that, because otherwise it can absorb you for days. I remember I couldn't talk to my friends because of that specific case I was dealing with. So you can't share that information outside of the office, but you still want to share it, because if you bottle it in, I started to see
Eats you
darkness
up.
coming to me,
Yes.
because you start to imagine how that person was negligent to that baby. You start to imagine that happening to your own baby if you're a mother like myself, and
Mm,
thinking, what if that baby had died? Unfortunately, well, the good thing is the baby didn't die. So these are some of the things that When an HR person says, I work in HR, it's so diverse, it's so broad. So these are examples that I've lived and seen. But there's other things that affect an HR person. So I know you mentioned the positives, which were rewards, compensation, improving people's lives, their mental health, their well-being. One of the things I did was to create a well-being circle. So I called it tea and talk. So people could come have tea. And I remember my director looking at me and say, what is that? But a lot of people actually used it. And I could graphically show him every month that look at how much improvement we're making in people's mental life, mental health. They're coming and speaking more about the issues and we're being able to resolve them on the tick. So that's a good thing, even on your part as a business, because then places like it's not Trustpilot, it's Glassdoor. That's the name I wanted to use. Glassdoor. Go to places where people read about organizations and see what that business is doing and how they treat their people. So it is important to, as you said, people are an asset. They're an asset for a reason. They stay in a business because of how they're being treated in there.
Yeah.
So those are some of the fundamentals that come into my role as an HR person to, harness the talent and also encourage the organization to really stay on track. Don't forget, don't just roll in the profit and then forget that these people have
Yes.
constant lives that are changing dynamically and so many different things affecting them. So the color is real. There's a lot of color there that we face. There's a lot of I know they sometimes hate, but I tend not to see that side. I always just think if I'm doing my part and it's written down, like I said, HR is compliant and there's governance and there's support from other organizations like ACRE. So if something's written down that this is how it should go, that's how it's going to go, whether people like it in the organization or not.
Okay, interesting. So let's look at, right now I'm a 16 or 15, 16-year-old, and I'm thinking to myself, I fancy a career in HR. What are my next steps? Because I know for some careers there's like various options, from apprentices to going to uni, to internships. How does one navigate moving into a role in HR eventually? What do they need to start? Where do they need to start from?
I think with the 15 and 16, it's quite interesting because most of what we need to do is have that experience, right? To kind of understand the workplace. So sometimes at 15 and 16, if you don't have a full understanding of the workplace, it then becomes a challenge for you to drive that career very quickly to where you want to go. So I believe that if you're at 15 or 16, what's that level? Is that A level already, or there? That's
That's
just
year 13, I think year 12, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that
number.
region. So
Appreciate
O
age and
levels, A levels types,
yes.
and you basically you're planning on what to do next for uni or whatever. How does one get into that? Yeah.
So HR at the stage of uni, I think what gets interesting is that it's because we've already said it's a broad subject. So it depends on what you want to do. So if you want the conversation we had earlier about looking at your next 5 years and thinking about what you actually want to become in HR is what helps you now. So it's an interesting discussion that I like to have with people that I coach. So I like to look at where they're going, what direction are they planning to take. So HR can be learning and development, which could be training. So this is just in an organization. So this could be the training side where you're kind of focused on what people want to do and improve in as far as skills is concerned within that business. Whether you're working in tech or you're working in just the customer services role, there's always the extra training that people always require and certification. So when you think about that, it will help you to decide what you need to focus on in terms of the modules you'll take at university if you're going the university route. So the university route, for me, I advise, because HR is very saturated. It's very there's so many people that pick HR quickly and feel like, oh, it's going to be easy, it's going to be a nice kind of course to navigate, quickly get through it at university. One thing I want to say, the first thing you need to know is deep down inside your gut and your heart, you love HR. Otherwise, it will be a wasted 3 years. You study HR and then you realize that, oh, I should have studied something else. if you don't like HR. But if you love HR and you've got a passion for it, it helps you to realize which path you want to take. The training side, the rewards, those are all part of the learning and the development side of things. Or do you want to do the strict HR, which is just I call it strict HR because that's just the paperwork, the documentation, whether that's kind of strict with payroll as well in there, the budgets and things like that. So those are some of the parts that you could choose in HR. Or there's the soft aspect, which I always like for people to understand. So the soft skills in HR are important because we are quick to identify with those where you know how to speak to people, the empathy side, that behavioral knowledge, the cognitive knowledge, understanding how people's minds work. So because I said this was a spiritual calling, so I'm very inclined in terms of the psychology, the physiology of people, the behavior. So when you like that, HR even becomes a better kind of route to take. So all these are things that when somebody sits down and says, I want to do HR, they need to be sure what they want to do. And once they identify which one is for them, then it's easier because when you pick your modules at uni, you pick your subjects at uni, you can be able to pick those up very quickly and you can focus on those a lot. I also like my research, so I like my the leadership side of HR, which helps you kind of build on. And I think that's what I enjoyed when I was at uni, the leadership, the business development, just understanding how to lead an organization. And obviously, as you will see into my career path, I then become my own business owner based on things like that have kind of channeled my wisdom as the years have gone. But I think not to think that everybody that does HR needs to go into university. There's the option to actually go into a business. If the business offers training, they can actually do a CIPD level 3. It starts at level 3. As long as you've got GCSEs, I think, and A levels, you can do level 3. The requirements are not much. I think once you've got into that organization and they can see your key skills in HR, then you can start at level 3 and then you can go on to level 5. I'm quite blessed. I worked in an energy organization for quite a while. And then when I went to uni, I didn't have to go to level 5. They took my experience and embraced it and took me straight to level 7. So I didn't have to do level 3, level 5. Because I carried my experience into uni. So one of the things I think I would advise anybody with work and how the terrain is and the challenges that we say, oh, you need to come into work with experience. And people are saying, but how do I have experience? I've just come out of school. That balance is go and get work, go and get the experience. Even if it's at McDonald's, start to picture yourself being that team leader. I don't know if going back, I know I worked at McDonald's. I used to work at a finance company and I used to do their books from morning till morning, I think 7:30 until 2. And I used to go and do a late shift at McDonald's. So I used to do the late shift and I remember them saying quickly, you should become a team leader, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's kind of my natural leadership skills that kind of pulled me into those zones. So I think once as you're growing up, understand how you interact with your friends. That's how easy it kind of draws you into who you become in a team dynamic. And then once you pick that up, you can quickly know what you need to be. If you're that person that needs to be in the back, HR is improving. There's now AI with HR. So if you're going to be dealing with the governments, the paperwork, the documentation, you can then say, oh, I'm a tech geek, but I want to do HR. So then you kind of look at how HR is impacting or how AI is impacting HR. So those are some of the things that are available. The avenues are many. HR is a very explorative kind of I want to call it role because it's quite big. So you can explore any part that you want. And I think from where I sit now, I feel there's a lot that luckily I'm a self-talker. So I was kind of talking to myself and saying, no, this is how I want to go. This is how I want to go. But not everybody has the same blessing. So you might find that you then get somewhere and you get very confused and you're not sure which path to actually take. So that's when I think the coaching, the mentoring comes into play.
Okay.
That's how I can say it.
Would you say somebody who is looking at this as a career needs a mentor or should have a mentor, at least to help them in their career progression?
Especially the career progression. The reason why I'm going to say that from a woman of color, a woman of Zimbabwean ethnicity. I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to the schools here. So my lack of knowledge of this terrain, even if I kind of went straight into work, that doesn't help when it comes to how I should navigate certain things. So I'm one of those people that used to walk out of jobs because I was annoyed by B or C.
Mm.
So a mentor is very important. I will repeat that one 100 times. A coach is very important because they'll help you sort your CV out. They'll help you iron out and fine iron who you become as you're growing into that career. They'll give you that strength to keep your head up. They'll give you that ability to stand by what as you've identified what your career path is, stand by it. Don't ever let anybody make you think you should be something else or you should be someone else in that business. But you want to do all these things and you want to face all these career challenges, which for me now, if I'm to mention, it's the racism, because it's not always open. It's not always obvious that these people are being racist or these people are maltreating you to try and push you out. I've experienced that. To maltreat you, to try and push you out of a position. They won't do it in a way that you will see that, yes, they will do it subtly. And when I say they, it becomes quite a lot of different people doing different things at the same time. So being
Mm.
able to navigate that and stay on track and stay on focus and not let that maybe make you lose your job or make you quit or make you walk off site, things like that I wish there was a voice here saying, don't, just stay, calm down or
Mm.
deal with it like this, is what I can actually say now that, it's definitely, you need a coach, you need a mentor. I believe that from my experience, honestly, there was a lot that I could say. I'm this type of person that doesn't say I regret, but there's places where I feel like, okay, I could have dealt with that differently, especially at that younger age of like 23, 25, where you're still trying to see how you're growing, but also you're growing as a person, right?
Mm.
Self-discovery, but you're also growing in a career. So if this
Mhm.
career is to grow to the level that it has to grow to, you need that mentorship, to be able to have somebody always rallying behind you.
Okay. I think I totally get it because I have been in those situations,
Mm,
and I sometimes do say to myself, maybe I should have had that voice as well, saying, don't overreact or
mm,
things like that. But I think out of that adversity for me was born, you know, this channel, and which is one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate of understanding the role. The whole concept is to
yeah.
understand the role before you actually decide on going into that role. Understand
Mm,
what the requirements. Understand what will be required of you. Understand whether you are capable of delivering based on those requirements, and whether you are an actual good fit.
yeah.
There are many red flags in organizations which you can pick up, but
Mm,
sometimes because we are in a position of lack of control
mm,
over our own careers, a position of desperation financially, we end up making decisions that don't really benefit
mm,
us in the long term,
mm,
and do much more harm than good. And I
yeah.
think that's one of the things that HR sort of picks up on in terms of trying to make sure that you are a good fit, you
Yeah.
are the right person, and whether your personality wouldn't be detrimental not only to you within the role or to the team and the business as a whole.
Mm. I like that you've mentioned that good fit part. I'll do this as a confession so that people don't say HR people. So there's something that, the good fit thing. Whilst I like it, I don't like it. It has made me really sit in difficult positions. So one of the things, for example, do not hate me after this, but there's times when I've never had to hire Black people in an organization. Not because I don't like Black people, but
Mhm.
because I can see that as they come into this business here, they will not fit. And I don't want to hire, it will be so painful for me to hire somebody with the passion of, oh my God, look at their CV. They're so brilliant. And I think like you've just mentioned now, that's some of the reasons why you've advocated to be able to become that voice. when you look at somebody's CV and you're like, this is such a wonderful CV, this person is very good, they're probably going to do well, and you give them that interview, they come in, you're the one interviewing them, and they do so well at interview stage, but you can see that they won't fit in this business because of maybe the line manager that's recruiting for that position. So it's such a shame because we've actually sometimes as HR people, because there isn't that much, it's good that AI has come into play now and there's blind recruitment. I don't know if people know blind recruitment, but blind recruitment is just getting a CV that doesn't have a name or a location so that people are not
Biased.
yes. So you don't know who's this person that's applying. You're just looking at the CV from that level. So there's that element. So I've actually been able to kind of get rid of people, even if they were good on paper, but I would know that they wouldn't be able to fit in that organization.
Yeah, I totally get it. Totally get it. Well, as we come to the end of our conversation, I think it's been very insightful and I think it's been very useful, especially understanding, what HR does, their role, and how best, one could actually break into that market and, especially if they're looking to have a career, not as a stepping stone, but to actually build a career in HR to eventually probably aspiring to becoming a business owner like yourself.
Yes. I think one of the things I'd like to mention is the reason why sometimes we become business owners, and I think it's the entrepreneurial side. It's just like it's most likely because of some of the challenges that we faced along the way. So you then structure your business in such a way that you can, one way or the other, become that career coach, that mentor, so that you tell others how to do it. But it's also the fact that if you were to go the direct path of saying level 3, level 5, level 7, go Lerato, become a director of a business. I'm sure people know this. There isn't that many CEOs who are black, who are women in companies and organizations at the moment. So I create my own career path. I create my own decision making to take that, business ownership as the best place to be so that I can attain that position I want to attain, but at a level that I can manage for myself and be able to navigate it around my family and my lifestyle as well.
Lerato Khumalo
Yes.
of Haus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this and I really had fun. I really love it.
Thanks.
Cheers.